Okay, so good evening, everyone. I'm Jacky Seery, and my research was actually 7 years ago. I graduated in 2018, but I do feel the theme is still relevant because being a family carer could happen to any of us. So with that in mind, just a little bit of background. I trained to teach yoga, Tai Chi and Qigong many years ago. And then I learned to teach mindfulness and compassion. And as soon as I started with the mindfulness and compassion, I realized how important, I think Suzanne alluded to this as well, how important being embodied and noticing what's going on in the body is so important to us. So I also had previous experience of being a family carer myself. And my research connected me to a group of family carers. It wasn't really intentional at the time. It just happened to flow towards me. And so that was where my research took me. And I contributed my research to a book called Mindful Heroes and the Hero's Journey, because what happened to me as part of doing this research was that I went on a journey of discovery and healing for myself through my journey with the carers. So I'd learned all this stuff, shared it with them, and then in turn that came back to me with deeper insights on my own journey. So my research took me on a journey with a small group of unpaid family carers. So these are there's a group of 10 who were caring for their relatives from a range of elderly parents to young children. So it was quite a diverse group. And my intention was to just share with them the 8-week mindfulness-based living course. But as I was doing my literature review and a week before embarking on the research, I went to this work. It was a masterclass at Oxford University, which I'll tell you a bit more about. And it just completely changed my outlook. So I had to change everything. And that's why I extended it into a 10-week mindfulness course to include some Qigong and an emphasis on compassion. And my question was empathic distress present among family carers and the impact of that? And did the course shift the negative impact of their caring role to one of compassion and well-being? So my methodology for doing this was mixed methods. I wanted to merge the quantitative and qualitative data as a means of providing the best of both worlds, because I didn't feel that just quantitative data alone with the questionnaires would be enough. I wanted to hear their stories. So with the quantitative, I use pre and post course questionnaires for the stress scale, the perceived stress scale, resilience, flourishing, and self-compassion. And for the qualitative data, I captured their stories from narrative pre and post course, using focus groups, individual interviews. I documented my weekly observations on what I heard. And also they presented me with poems and paintings as the course progressed. So I used that as part of my data too. So pre-intervention, this is what the data revealed to me. These are the words that came up. They felt stressed, they were isolated, they felt guilty, they felt anxious, they were angry, they were having a breakdown, they were tired, they'd reached rock bottom. So you can see all these words here were words I heard from them and that also came through in the questionnaires as well. And the themes that came out here were role engulfment, that meant that they were completely absorbed in their role of caring, that they had lost their sense of self. They were fatigued, and I'll use this word compassion fatigue because that's one that I think we hear a lot. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment. Both mentally and physically fatigued. They felt guilty about their feelings of resentment And they also felt grief at the life, not only their sense of life that they'd lost, but also that they'd lost this loved one to this this illness. So that was the pre-course. And so this masterclass that I was telling you about, this suddenly just changed when I heard their plight, and having been a family carer myself, I resonated with this. And I went to this this masterclass run by this scientist, Tanya Singer, who's from Germany. And she'd been conducting this experiment where she took two monks, Mingyur Rinpoche and Matthieu Ricard, and she invited them to be part of her experiment, and she invited them into this MRI scanner so she could scan their brains while they were meditating. Okay, so at the beginning, she asked them if she showed them some photographs that were quite distressing of some children, and asked if they could just focus on them in their meditation. Because her theory was that when we experience others' pain, when we are, with this compassion fatigue or this empathy that we feel, it activates our own pain center in the brain. And what can happen is, and I really resonate with this, is that I want you to get better so I feel better, so I don't feel this pain anymore. And so what happened was when they were in the scanners and they were focusing on these children in distress, as she had predicted, the pain center in their brains activated. And then suddenly it changed, and that calmed down. And then their empathic side, the soothing center of their brains activated. And she couldn't understand that. And she asked them what they were doing. And they said, well, we couldn't stand the pain anymore. So we just did our normal meditation where we send kindness to others. And then that changed, and that the pain activity died down, and this soothing center activated. So this was quite key, because I thought that's exactly what is happening with these family carers. And so I brought this into my research. And Tanya actually renamed compassion fatigue. She said, you can't get tired of compassion, but you can get tired of empathy because you feel the pain. So she renamed it empathic distress fatigue from compassion fatigue. And you can see here from the diagram that this is hers, where she says, with compassion, we have positive feelings of love. It has a good impact on our health and our relations with others, and this pro-social motivation. Whereas when we're suffering from empathic distress, we become quite internalized. We have negative feelings. This causes stress, poor health, and burnout, and withdrawal. Okay, so with this in mind, and alongside other research with my literature review, and bearing in mind my research is 7 years ago, and I'm sure there's much more research now on mindfulness, compassion, and Qigong. So this is why I decided to introduce compassion in Qigong, because I thought these guys are stressed. They need some way of feeling better. So mindfulness, we know, reduces stress, reduces depression, increases body awareness, and decreases thought content, where the mind just keeps going off. And compassion, so I thought this isn't going to do it on its own, mindfulness. What else can we introduce? So having been trained in compassion in Qigong, I looked up the research of the benefits of this, and compassion increases feelings of warmth and positive thoughts, activates our neural networks, which is really important, of love and positive emotions, reduces these negative ruminative thoughts, increases a sense of purpose in life. I mean, these guys were engulfed in their role and had lost the sense of self. So compassion, is said to increase our sense of purpose in life, and it increases the ability to cope with these unpleasant emotions that they might be feeling. And Qigong, research tells us that just 10 minutes of Qigong is enough to increase our serotonin levels. And we know that serotonin is the feel-good factor. So I thought if I introduce just a small amount of Qigong for them, this will help reduce their stress levels, reduce the cortisol in their systems, and increase their levels of serotonin and dopamine, and also improve their sleep, because they were all saying that they weren't sleeping very well. Okay, so I took this 8-week course, but what I realized was that I needed to extend it because of including some extra compassion practices and some Qigong. So I taught them a 10-minute Qigong sequence, which they found quite helpful. And also when I was saying to them, oh, you know, in our usual 8-week course, we say, oh, you know, meditate 30, 40 minutes a day. And they were like, no way, no way. So I said, well, can you do 5? Can you do 10? And they said, yeah, I think we can do that. So I adapted the practices to just be 5 or 10 minutes long for them. And what happened was that after a period of time, they said, oh, yeah, we've been doing that. But now we've gone on to the 30-minute one that you gave us. So the 5 minutes became 10, and then the 10 eventually became 30. And then I taught them more daily life practices, because I thought that would be more helpful for them, because they didn't really have the time to practice. They were so involved with looking after their loved one. So I taught them 3-minute breathing space, the self-compassion break, resting with the breath, loving kindness, because we know that by inviting feelings, inviting someone in that you care about, this begins that flow of compassion that's within us all. So that's a really good way in for them to start feeling compassion and then turning it towards themselves. And then this short Qigong practice. So what I documented was a journey. That here they were at the beginning. They were feeling this empathic distress. They were fatigued. They were engulfed completely in their role and feeling this grief. And then when they connected in the group, I think the group environment was very important, because suddenly they're in it together, this common humanity, and they begin to feel safe and this sense of connectedness with each other. And then they become more mindful, and then they became more aware. And then they began to move towards this journey of acceptance, because recognizing that they couldn't change what was happening or what had happened, and how painful that gap is between how you want things to be and the reality. And then I noticed that they gradually became more compassionate and this empathic concern. And then the surprise in it all for me that I didn't expect was the sense of self-care and the sense of self that developed in this positive self. And suddenly they started doing things for themselves. And when they became happier, then their relationships improved, and those around them became happier too. So they had improved relationships. And then this all led to the physiological and psychological well-being. Okay, so my quantitative findings were, after the course, were that there was a 35% decrease in perceived stress, a 20% increase in flourishing, a 22% increase in self-compassion, and a 15% increase in resilience. But what was more important to me was what I heard them say. And these are the words that I heard them say: that they felt mindful, they'd found their voice, they had a more sense of a positive self, they felt more in control, they were calmer, more accepting. They felt they had choices. They felt they were coping better. So you can see all these words here that I put into this bubble here. But again, what was the surprise to me was this positive self that came out of that. And what contributed to that was this social self. They were telling me that they were going out to art classes. They were going out running. They were saying, you know what, I can take a half-hour break. Whereas before they didn't seem to be able to do that. And suddenly they were saying, yeah, I actually matter too, because I did emphasize the need to put on their own oxygen mask first, and that you can't help others if you're not okay. And they really got that. So their self-esteem really began to increase, their self-confidence and their self-compassion, which all contributed to this emergence from this role engulfment into this sense of a positive self. And I just wanted to show you some of the poems, and there's several poems and several pieces of art, but I just wanted to demonstrate some of the other, well, the beauty of qualitative data that can extend beyond words into this artwork in the same way as Suzanne found. And I just want to read you this poem because it was quite profound, and it had everyone in tears as she read it out. So it's called Seasons. This is one of the family carers. And she says, "I've lived in winter for too long, burdened by the weight of responsibility. I've grown cold and lonely. Mindfulness, you've shown me spring. You've touched me with the soft breeze of change. You've cleansed me with bittersweet tears of rain. You've shown me a glimpse of sunshine. But it will be me who steps into summer alone, head held high to catch the warmth. It will be my summer. Others may choose to follow, and that will be their summer. Winter will come again, but I have mindfulness at my side, my companion for life." And she actually described how, because she'd been caring for her husband, and she described how they'd turned back the clock and rekindled their marriage with the relationship that they had now. It was different to how they wanted it to be, but they still had this sense of love and connection that she felt the mindfulness and the compassion had helped her with. So just to conclude, my theory was that the family carers suffer from this negative response to other suffering, which can manifest as compassion fatigue and burnout, and that scientific research is claiming that empathic distress fatigue is now the new compassion fatigue, and that family carers indeed do suffer from this. The practice was a development of a 10-week course, which included the mindfulness-based living course, together with some extra compassion and Qigong daily life practices. And the research told me that that this course decreased their symptoms of empathic distress fatigue, that they did develop a positive self and began to emerge from these original themes of what they're experiencing, and that their relationships with their loved ones really improved, and that they increased their own well-being as a result, and that the qualitative data in a mixed method study really proved richer findings than the quantitative data alone. So that's it.